Hi and welcome to another episode of the Getting Things Done podcast from GTDnordic. I am Morten and I am still here as always with my good friend and colleague Lars Rothskill Hendriksen. Hujambo Lars.
Hi Morten, good to see you as always, and as always looking forward to recording another episode with you. The purpose of this podcast is to help you learn GTD or become even better GTDers. So we, as always, hope that this episode supports you in that. And if it does, we love to hear from you. If you're new to GTD, we recommend you go back and listen to episodes 1 through 6 to get an introduction to the basics of getting things done. And now this is episode number 61. And today we'll be talking about a topic that I think is becoming even more relevant again as the world unfolds in the way it does.
It certainly is very relevant, I would say. We dubbed this episode the best practices of working from home. And for those of you who are doing this, you might have some tips and tricks you can pick up. That's based on the Getting Things Done methodology and our general practices Lars and I have seen working in the real life of working from home, which we both have been doing for a long time. So, Lars, we had a little talk before the pre-show. In the pre-show we had a little talk. And where do you think we should start? What would be the first thing you want? What first topic we should talk about?
Well, I think first of all, it's just something that's been really, clear with the way that the pandemic has evolved over the last months and even now in 2 years. It's been, at least the coaching clients that I've worked with have really seen a significant shift in the way that they work and how they work, how they need to set up their systems to support them in this new sort of hybrid way of working, maybe going a bit to the office, maybe you've been back for a while, maybe you're heading home once again to work from home. And a good place to start is obviously the base, the workstation, the cockpit, where you sit and do your daily work. And that's one of the things that has changed most for me, I think, in working from home, is really to invest in having a good, solid cockpit to work from, having a good base to sit down, do my work. So when I sit down there, I naturally head on into work mode and I'm ready to get things done from the work lists. So for me, having the inbox set up, obviously the physical in tray next to my setup is critical for me to have some place to drop things off. It might not be as necessary as it might have been for me at an office with colleagues dropping by, dropping things off, things like that. But as I'm sure many of our listeners already know, there is a lot of stuff that shows up at home. So it'll typically, for me at least, be a mix of work and home-related things that end up in there. And again, if they don't have a place to land, they'll land all over the place. So having a specific in-tray set up is of course a critical component in that cockpit. And it's so funny just reflecting on that before we started. When I give the introductory speech to getting things done in a company, there will always be hesitation with regards to having that in-tray set up. And I recognize that for myself as well when I started off with GTD, but it's just people can really, recognize once they start working it that when they didn't have it, their whole house was really an inbox. Any flat surface could be an inbox, or the refrigerator or whatever it might be will tend to capture things. So having that in tray set up is a good place to start.
Yeah, and just the practicalities of having an in tray makes it possible for you to stop using your head as a system more quickly than if you don't, because there will show up things in your physical world that needs to land there. Both work and personal related objects, and specifically when you work from home, that might be a good idea. Just get one. And it is, as I was talking to my wife, she wanted me to. She bought a snow globe that the batteries was not working, and she wanted me to change those batteries. And so I said to put it in my inbox, and she did. And the batteries get changed, or actually they haven't been changed yet. But that resulted in buy 2 LR44 batteries at our Home Depot, or locally the same, and don't underestimate that in a home office to have an in-tray. That's really important. I do agree with you.
And it's funny that you mentioned that as an example, because as we record this approaching Christmas, I never knew there were so many different types of batteries that existed out there. So now that you mentioned that, when we had 2 or 3 different ones that I had to go pick up as well, to make sure that we had, the lights for the kids' bikes and all the different Christmas lights that came up. So yeah, again, the inbox a good place for that. And another thing that actually then leads into that is a good place for support material. So all of the stuff that you need when performing an extraction or to get an overview of a project, we need to store those things someplace. So what I found is that initially I saw the need for the inbox, and I started to see these things that didn't really have a place to land. So these things that I needed to do. So where would you put that snow globe while you were waiting to get those batteries? So having a place for that kind of thing, I do tend to see that people are missing this in their setup. So make sure that you have a place for those kinds of things, especially when it's work-related things you have to read, stuff you need to go through before you head into an important meeting that's printed physically. Then have that place somewhere. So for me, it's just another tray, similar to the in-tray here at the office. At home, it's a specific drawer dedicated to that purpose. And we actually also have a specific shelf in a cupboard for things that we need to bring to friends, bring to family when we go there. So they have a place to sit while we wait to whenever that happens.
Yeah, I do wholeheartedly agree that this, the action support or project support material needs to reside somewhere. Once you decided that the snow globe needs batteries, then snow globe needs to live somewhere where you will find it when you eventually get the batteries. And I do agree, and I have also action support in-tray. And I also have part of a shelf that I call my action support or project support material. And I also have this action support folder that I use for printed material in my folder rack, which is really handy.
Yeah, I have that too. It's more worn out than yours. I don't think you can even read it anymore. What's on my label? It's been used that much over the years. And then, of course, good. Having that cockpit, making sure that you have your own cockpit. Oftentimes, sometimes you may be constrained physically. There might not be enough room for you to have each of your own workstations. But I saw that now as part of a move that we made last year, having separate desks, having a place to work, each of us, both of us working from home sometimes. It really is just critical to have that space for yourself. So if possible, if you have room for it, then have your own separate setup with all the things that you need. And if possible, as we start to work more from home, having, good equipment, having a good, good screen, everything set up right, your desk is at the right height, your chair is at the right height, that you have everything you need easily available to you. I think that equipment setup is something that probably people might want to invest in now that we might again see us working more from home. And actually, I think we just spoke about that before as well, upgrading equipment.
Yeah, indeed. I have an iMac that is, I think the English expression is long in the tooth, which means in the plain language that it's a little old and it's a little slow. And when I started to try and open up Ecamm Live that we use for recording, the machine went into, I don't want to make this, I am very jagged, and it's, and so I had to restart the machine. So I'm looking forward to buy a new iMac, because I recognize that as one of my most important tools. And people tell me, this is one of my pet peeves when I talk to leaders in companies, is that, oh no, our company policy says that I can't have another iPhone than anyone else, so I have to have this old model, we buy them cheap. And I tell them, tell this person is, what is your hourly rate? How much do you make in 1 hour? How much does you cost the company for 1 hour? And this is your price, okay. Sometimes they don't want to tell me this, but I'm just making up a number, and I ask them, let's pretend it is this, and then I will tell them that, okay, so you are telling me that buying a new iPhone is not well worth your time. This is like saying to a butcher, you need to win the world championship in butchership. I don't know if that's something that actually exists, but the company gives you a dull knife, a not well-functioning knife. And one of the most important things for a modern business, people working in an office needs a good phone. This is one of your most important tools. So if your phone is not optimal or your computer not optimal, you are using a lot of time in what I call friction mode. I have friction for this now. I will, as soon as Apple comes out with a new computer, I'm waiting for the new iMacs to have the new processor in it, and I will buy it immediately, because I'm not waiting. I don't want to wait for my computer to do the job. I wanted to do it almost before I have intention of doing it, which is not possible. Of course, it's AI. It's not there yet, but I don't know. Have you seen the same thing when you coach leaders, that they are kind of hung up on tools that they can't? We have this famous the law in the Nordic region, which is a law you should not.
I do remember it.
Have something anyone else don't have, or something. I don't remember exactly what's the name. Yeah. Or the wording there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just clearly remember it back from my IT consultancy days, that I used to ask managers about this all the time, because we would go into the office and we would have, decent laptops, and over the years they might not, function that well, and we would spend 5-10 minutes for them to be ready in the morning. And, so we were a big office, a lot of people globally. And, if they were to add that up and think how much time we spent just, waiting for the machines to boot up, that should make it an easy calculation to see that obviously it makes sense to have some good equipment for knowledge workers.
Yeah, and to have well-functioning equipment, especially on computers and phones, are, I think, vital for anyone who wants to create value in the digital world now, where we are all knowledge workers. So, and I'm sure you would make a CFO cry if you made a possibility or had the possibility to actually make a calculation of what it costs you, of the wasted time for waiting a computer to boot. Computer should open and be ready. That's the ideal scenario. Not 5 minutes to wait for boot time is, 4 minutes and 30 seconds too much, I think.
Yeah, completely agree. So something to reflect on, especially as you sit there working from home, that you have a good, good screen. Just simply, those kinds of things that, when you sit and spend that much time to work, that you have a good screen, good for your eyes, good size for you to work from with the work that you do. It's certainly worth looking into. And then I think from a systems perspective, so most of the people listening will likely have a GTD system set up. It will likely be digital, and obviously that'll be hopefully also accessible from home as you work there. Regardless of where you work, you still have access to this system. So making sure that it's set up and working well for you in this new way of working, at least what I've found, is one of the key lists to be aware of as you work from home is these agenda lists. So lists where the next action is for you to talk to someone, then that goes on an agenda list for this person, or also have these for different meetings that you show up to, that you have some kind of part in, something that you want to mention in those meetings, that you have agenda lists for these types of meetings. As we don't, work from the office, we don't just, walk by and get a chance to talk. So it's even more critical, in my experience, that you have good solid good solid agenda list for those next actions that you need to discuss with someone. Yeah,
and I just want to add to that is that something I think is a good idea for most people who are in the digital world now is that share the idea of an agenda list with the people you are, interacting with. and help them set their agendas list up and teach them how to use it. Because as a GTDer, you will know that a lot of people in organizations, they have, I am afraid I will forget this, so I have to DM this to you immediately, or I will need to send you an email immediately about this subject, or I will forget it. Because I know myself, I will not remember this. But instead of that, then write it down on an agenda list, and there is one more ding less in that, the recipient's world, which is the problem for many, is that we are distracted by all the dings and whistles that we allow our focus to be interrupted by. So
yeah, exactly. Exactly. And other than that, I think, at least for me, when reflecting on working from home, as I also did back in the day in my IT consultancy days, one of the critical lists for me was the projects list, to make sure that I had the right overview. So when we would head off into a status meeting, that you would have the updated projects list on your end, that you knew the status of where each of these projects were going. So whatever you had on your list, that you were able to work from that list, and having that overview to share with the team. So I think for those listening who are now starting to work from home, making sure that you have the right solid overview of those projects, so you're ready to go into those status meetings, and of course to support you in working on the right things at the right time as you head out of those meetings.
Indeed, projects lists are vital for your mental well-being. Keep things out of your head, but also then to keep it up to date is super important for. And both in the office, but also in the home office. So working from home it helps you get things out of your head and make it stay outside your head, if you're good at capturing those and have them up to date. Indeed.
Yeah. And then also making sure that you have the right context list. So as you switch from office to home, you might want to reflect on whether you have the right list. So it might have been simpler times when you were working at the office, you had your computer list, for example, to work from. As you now maybe start to work from home, maybe a mix of going to the office and working from home, it might make sense to split that list up, or at least reflect on the list that you have to see that they support you in making it relatively easy to figure out what the right thing is for you to do. So for me, my setup is that I have different lists for different things that I want to do into the different locations. So I have a list for my Mac at the office, things that make sense for me to work from there. From home, I use my iPad to work from. I have a list specifically for my iPad for the things that make sense for me to do from that machine. So for me, it really helped to distinguish those two, so I have a good, simple list to work from, because otherwise you will likely end up with some list where, big Excel stuff where I need to work with a CSV file, a comma separated values file. I don't want to do that on my iPad. I don't think that works very well. It will often come into conflict someplace along the workflow for me. So I'll make sure to split those tasks up to make sure that it's easy for me to sit down, look at my list, and pick the right things to work from. I'm guessing you've had some of the same experiences.
Yes, I have, and when I talk to clients and when we teach this, we just for a reminder for those of you who I heard about this context list. What are they again? And then a context list is list of next actions, next physical, visible next actions that you can do in one sitting where you have everything you need. That's the most precise definition, at least that I can think of for the next action. And those need to live on a list where, and they should only reside on one list, not on two. They should reside on a list where you need to be physically. For instance, you need to be at the home office, and you can then have one for at home as well. And so it's a physical place, or at the office, as we call it now in Norway, office for the physical office. Or a tool you need. So either a physical place or a tool you need. Some people love having, and they have some, let's say they have a CRM system, want to update that just once a week. They go in there and check what's happened, and they don't use it very actively before they decide to do something about it. And then that at CRM would be a context. Or any other, like if you have an SAP talking to a former SAP consultant, Lars, I'm sure you can appreciate that when you are doing something in a specific context, that could also be a tool, like a software tool. And to be clear about them, is very important. And we talked about this, that GTD has had some people giving it criticism because of the context lists. And because they say that, but I can do everything on my PC, so my PC list is very long. Yeah, it might be. But then you are widening your net maybe a little too much for how many projects you have active at the same time. And that's where I will butt my head in and say that, okay, if you don't have too many active projects, but you make an on hold for projects and on hold for next actions, you can park them there and you don't have to see them on your next actions lists at all, depending on how you set up your system or what tool you use. But just to narrow down the number of projects you work on at the same time, then your PC list will not be longer than how many projects you have if you just make one next action per project, which is best practice. So, anything to add to my little rambling there?
No. That makes perfect sense, and it's just it's some of the things that I continually tweak and work with and make sure that they work well for me. So, I bought the iPad to use as my base work from home machine, and when I bought that, I introduced the iPad tag for me to set up my context list to work from the iPad. I have my iPad for work-related stuff. I have some other iPad things that I want to do for home. So I have my iPad-home as well to work from in my list. So again, part of those lists, part of the system where you need to tweak it to make sure that it works well for you, and especially again, looking back to the topic of the day, working from home, how does that then relate to your office work, and how can you then set up the system to support you best in that way? So I think we've spoken about the setup, the physical setup, that you have a good cockpit. We spoke a bit about the system now. And the last thing I wanted to add at least was this having good practices in your sort of overall work, meaning so having good practice for when you work, do your work, and when you are off work. So having specific, time frames set up, having different ways of navigating your system to make sure that you're doing the right things at the right time. And at least my experience with coaching clients is that normally the time setup is critical for them. So obviously clocking in at the right time, clocking out at the right time, and really being aware of that, because it can be, challenging sometimes to work from home. We had a call recently where we discussed with a good GTDer who had noticed that she was working not only the regular working hours, but from the time that she would normally get in the car until the time that she would get out of her car, coming home, if she had been to the physical office. So she had naturally
and no wonder people are more productive when
exactly. Yeah. So really being aware of that, and really keeping an eye on whether you need to clock out at a specific time, or you need to get some more things done in any given day, at least reflecting on that and making sure that you sort of are able to shut down and say, okay, so now I'm off work, I'll step out the office, I'll close down the laptop or whatever you're working from, and then really say, okay, so now I'm home. If I'm reminded about something, I can still write it down. I can go in there and throw it in my in tray, and I can, stay in home mode, even though it's the office is just there.
I heard some people talk about this, and I've tried it a little, and I'm surely not the right candidate for this, because I feel that when I leave my home office space, I don't think about work until I have to go back there, or something happens that I get a call or something. But people are telling me that they have rituals for when they are shutting off work, and it could be that you just put your computer on standby and then says something. I hear people talk about system shutdown, or something like this. They say something that makes them remember that now I'm switching off my work. It's like this is not related directly, but indirectly, is that my wife and I, she want to make sure. She always asks me, "Did you lock the door?" We have our outer door, and of course I do, because I have this habit. I will always turn the knob to lock the door. 99.9% of the time I do that. I'm not perfect, so I can be distracted and forget it, but it's 99.9 is fairly close to 100. So we decided that when I locked the door, for her to remember that I actually did it, I lock the door and I say pink elephant. And that's a code word for locked door. And when she hears that, she can, he said pink elephant. It needs to be a little bizarre, strange something for her to remember. So when we talk about the pink elephant in this home, it means the door is locked. So,
have you met your neighbors recently, and are they asking about why you are shouting pink elephant from the from the front?
The door is then locked, so they don't hear me.
And soundproof, I hope.
Yeah, well, more or less. I don't shout very loudly, but yeah, I say it out loud. Pink elephant. So
yeah.
One of
the things that I've done to make that shift from work to home is that I've set up. So I'm very Apple based, meaning I have my iPhone, I have my iPad, I have my Mac at the office. And one of the things that I've set up, just to geek out a bit on the tools, is that I've set up shortcuts. So as I work during the day, my iPad home screens will be set up to show the work specific apps that I use for work. As soon as it hits 4 o'clock, or if I manually toggle it, whether it's work or personal, then it'll switch the screen. So the apps on the screen that shows up are different. I've set up a different background to show me, I'll be, look at my screen and it'll have a picture of me giving a GTD speech or some other GTD picture during the day. And then after those working hours, it'll shift to a personal picture from a summer holiday, and it'll do that on my phone, it'll do that on my iPad, it'll do that on my watch as well. So I found especially the watch part is actually very helpful, that I've kept a very simple watch face with photos of my family that show up from 4 o'clock until the next work day at 8 o'clock in the morning. And while at work, I have this nice detailed set of complications in that watch face that then gives me all the information I need when I do my work. And I think that has actually been a very helpful thing for me. Yeah, exactly. That's actually been very helpful for me to have that set up and automatically happen.
You glance at your watch and you understand I'm not at work anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I've done something similar, but not exactly. But I use Elgato Stream Deck for changing contexts. So you can, for instance, when I start for recording of our podcast now, I have and I will show, for those of you who are listening, you will not understand what I'm doing now, but I'm showing my Stream Deck control board. And this the Stream Deck is a USB device you put on your computer, and you connect to your computer via USB, and you install a little software and you can program this. And now I can switch profiles. I can do a lot of things from this. This profile I have for the Stream Deck, and when I start my Ecamm recording device, it will automatically switch to that context, and it will also switch to a different screen. So the desktop will be specifically for recording this, recording the podcast, and gets me the podcast background, so I'm in podcast mode. And when I'm finished or closing this, it will change the Stream Deck into another profile that's work related. So that to streamline the what am I doing right now, that's another tip for another day, but it is still inside my home office, so I'm mentioning it. And I just want to go back, because you started with what I think is the end of the day. I would like to go back to the start of the day, when you start your work day. Because, to have a good habit when you start your work day, I think that is also important, even before you start. I know people are telling me that they need to take their, the shirt on. They have to have, the work uniform on to get into work mode quickly. Me, myself, I don't need to do that to get into work mode. It's kind of like I just flip a switch in my brain and suddenly I'm working. I don't need a shirt to remind me this. But I understand, for instance, Jukka Bachman in Finland, our partner in Finland, he needs to put his business shirt on to remind him that he actually is in the office. And I don't know, do you feel the same, Lars? You need to put a shirt on something to remind you?
No, I think I'm more like you, and I think this. Well, obviously, Yuka has done this for ages as well.
Yeah.
But for me, it really is just back to it's all work. So regardless of what
Mm.
I'm doing, if I want to work from my list, I'll sit down and look at the appropriate list, whether
Mm.
it's on Saturday when I'm at home and I want to do something for my list, or whether it's at the office. I'll pick that up and I'll look at the right list that makes sense for me to do from the office. So
Mm.
for me, it is not necessary. I don't have to make that specific switch. It's just,
Mm.
it's how I work.
Mm. So, but some of the best practices that we teach people in our coaching and partially in our seminar is, how do you boot your day when you start your computer? A lot of people start your computer and then the first thing they do is to open Outlook. And they see all the emails and they start doing their emails. They start replying to emails and suddenly, wow, suddenly there's a meeting and I haven't prepared for that. Or the day is advanced and you've been playing, instead of doing what you maybe think you should be doing, you are being playing email ping pong with someone or a lot of people. So the best practices for booting your computer and starting Outlook is to start in the calendar mode. And why is that, Lars?
Also, you don't jump into emails and start doing that.
Exactly. No.
No, and I recognize that for myself as well. I used to be really, really good at that. Jumping into emails, just getting all those out of the way. And for the way that I work today, obviously the calendar is the key place to navigate from. But the way I have set up my dock on my Mac is simply I'll hit these 7 different apps that will just open up. So even though I might open my email, I'll go in there and I might check them and then clarify and organize the things that have shown up. I then would still fall back to, okay, here's the calendar, and then take a step back, take a deep breath, and then figure out, all right, so what's the right thing for me to work on right now? Is it that I have to head off into a meeting? Anything I need to prepare for a different meeting? So what's the right thing for me to work on?
So the best practices here from the David Allen Academy is to open the calendar first instead of going into emails, then have an overview of your hard landscape, then check your lists for whatever you can do if there is some available time, and then open Email Madness and see if there's something you can clarify and organize there, or not only look at something but clarify and organize your email to 0 if possible. And the reason is because you in your calendar is your hard landscape, what you decided to do today, such as just to start there. So I'm using on my Mac, I always have a mini version of my calendar open for the day, so that's the first thing I see when I open my computer. And so I have that at hand, and since I'm now being a very heavy-handed user of Pipedrive for most of my tasks that are customer related, they will also show up as full day events, so I can just keep a glance on what do I need to follow up today. So I have that overview, and it's fairly easy if you're on a PC to change the startup screen. And I'm taking this from memory. Lars, give me a hand if I'm wandering off, but you go for File, Alternatives, and I think it is in the General where you change the start Outlook in folder. At least you're looking for something called change start Outlook startup in, and then you change it to the folder from inbox to calendar. Does that make sense? Am I totally off, or are you desperately? I see your eyes are flickering a little now. Are you trying to find it out?
I don't remember.
No, okay. But files, alternatives, and look for something called Start Outlook In. And it should say inbox if you haven't changed it. And then you can change the folder to calendar and click save. And then go back to and then restart your Outlook and see if it works. If it starts in calendar, voila. And while you're in there, turn off all your notifications. Wouldn't you say?
Yes.
Yeah.
Please do.
Why? Why on earth would I turn off my notifications for email?
I used to love them so much. I would turn on more notifications if I could. So anything that I was able to switch on my phone, get all that input in there. So get those turned off. That would be the first thing that I would do on the Windows machine. Hit that Outlook icon, right click, show new notifications on email messages. I think it is the text. Switch that off right away.
Yeah.
You want to get rid of that.
And of course you want to have calendar notifications, but email notification is the death of your concentration or your ability to focus if you're working on something that actually needs your focus and concentration. So turning those off as well. And then when working from home, maybe you want to make sure that you are able to focus for a long time if that's necessary for you. If you want to walk, maybe you need to talk to your the other peoples in your family, that how can we interact with each other so that I can get my work done, and that you are not cutting my focus time in half or prolonging my focus time because you're interacting with me. Here is very easy. I can slide a door and lock another door, not lock it but close it, and that will be my signal to my wife, who also works from home, that now I'm not available for conversation. So when I'm ready, I just go up and just open the door, and she understands now. She can talk to me and we can interact. How do you solve that when you work from home? You have 2 small boys and a wife, so how do you handle that?
They don't work from home.
But in the Corona times now,
no,
maybe...
my wife would. No, my wife would sometimes do that, and we've been fortunate to have family to support us in taking on them. So when I had to work from home, or when I had to stay home with the boys the other day, I took the day off instead.
Yeah.
That was the more productive way for me to engage with that. But it brings us back to the original topic of agenda lists. So again, it's so easy to sit there if you're both working from home to interrupt each other, and when stuff shows up, similarly to what you described with could be chat, could be emails going back and forth, that you have a separate place with this. So when work is over, you have the right time to go through the agenda list, then you can walk through those topics and deal with them then.
And have an inbox where he or she can come and just drop things without saying something. That's also a good idea. So
and have your own inbox.
Yeah, have your own inbox. Circling back to the beginning of the show. So, okay, anything that we haven't covered that you think we should cover? Have you some more?
No, I think we walked through the things that I had noted down to walk through. I hope these were able to support you out there in reflecting on how you can work most productively from home. And if you have any tips, be sure to let us know. Podcast at GTDnordic.dk.
Okay, and I think that since we now have ended this topic, exhausted it from our shallow knowledge of knowledge work, it's GTD based on and our own experiences. So I hope that this is giving you some value. So Lars, will you take us out?
Yes, certainly. So we always wrap up these episodes by reminding you to head on over to GTDnordic.com and have a look around, because on that website you will find links to all of the country websites for each of the countries in the Nordics. And on those websites you will find articles about GTD, links to groups on social media where natives discuss the methodology, share their own tips and tricks, and of course all of our different offerings, both physical and virtual. If you're outside the Nordics, head on over to gettingthingsstarted.com to find your local partners. And since we, not recently, I guess for some time now, we've been recording these episodes on video as well. So if you want to watch these episodes instead, you can certainly do that. You can find them on each of our YouTube channels. So you'll find links to each of those in the show notes of the podcast. And lastly, as always, we really hope that you find these episodes valuable. If GTD has made a difference in your life, please consider helping us spreading the message to more people by giving the podcast a rating on Apple Podcasts, or Spotify recently started to offer this. So make sure you hit that rating button. It really helps the discoverability of the podcast, which is why we're here to help other people learn GTD.
Well, thank you, Lars, for taking us out. And until next time, people, stay safe and stay productive. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.